Hey, Dustin here, Smoking Eagles Rod Shop. Got another video for you today. I am working on the 455 Stage 1 heads for old Carmen Electra. And there's a few things I'd like to get done to these heads before I toss them back on the car to kind of maximize our horsepower here. Let me get you in here and I'll show you kind of what we're doing. Now I got these heads back from the machine shop and they fitted them with stainless Stage 1 valves. Look how close those things are, guys. You can't even fit an ace of spades between there. Maximum horsepower is what we're going for. Now, this engine is lower compression. So one thing that GM would do, they use the same casting number for stock head, standard or stock or whatever heads, and the Stage 1 heads. The only difference is they're fitted with the bigger valves, which we now have, and then they de-shroud the intake valve just ever so slightly, back maybe, I don't know, 100, 150 thousandths, and they just put a little radius on there and machine it out from the factory. Now, I don't want to lower our compression ratio any, so I'm not gonna get in here and get super crazy like we're, you know, shooting for a 6-second car or anything nuts and remove all this casting slag or whatever you want to call it in here. It's just a porous surface. It's not smooth, and you could go in here and polish all that out, get it nice and smooth, and that would help with horsepower and torque and all those things. But in our circumstance, it would also kind of lower our compression a little bit further, and I really don't want to hurt us in that area. So what I've decided to do is I've just taken my Dremel with a little sanding wheel on it, and I'm just going around this edge, and I'm just breaking that edge, putting a nice radius on it, so that when the intake valve and the exhaust valve open up and that air fuel's either trying to get in or out, it's not hitting this rough cast surface here. Some spots it's actually a lip on there and it's sharp. I'm just radiusing that out so that things can flow a little bit better. And then any major inconsistencies, like big chunks of cast material, like right here you can see a big old gnarly nub sticking off of there, I'm just kind of bumping them off of there. Now, I've already got this head over here done, and you can see kind of what I'm talking about. I'm just knocking that edge off of there and just helping our flow a little bit, especially right down in this corner where this intake valve is clearly shrouded. I mean, it's pretty obvious that flow is going to be hindered there a little bit. Now, these valves are opening quite a ways, so how much is that really going to affect it? For what we're doing, not enough to really worry. I mean, really, I'm doing more than I really need to, but you know, every little bit counts. So you can see I've got these all cleaned up down in here. So I've got this other head to do. I just wanted to show you guys a quick comparison here. You don't have to get super crazy. Just do what you feel comfortable with. And again, we're already low compression. So to go in here and just really polish all this out and stuff, that would be great. It would probably help a little bit, but it would also hurt us. So there really isn't any benefit for what we're doing to do that. But if you're running a drag car, you're running 10.5, 11 to 1 compression, super wild, super crazy, yeah, you could go in here and you can see where this material's raised up around this exhaust valve, and you could pull these valves out and you could really get all that nice and smooth and just really increase your flow. But it's just not worth it to us right now. Maybe later if I get better pistons, I'll pull these heads back off, obviously, to put new pistons in, and I'll spend a little more time, let's say, a little more time on these heads while I'm waiting on parts. Now, the other thing I've done is over here, these are the exhaust crossover holes. Now, this goes to the bottom side of your intake, and let me go grab that intake and I'll show you what these are for. So I've got my intake here, and on your regular daily driver or even your street rod or hot rod or whatever, you've got this exhaust crossover hole right here. It goes from one side of your intake over to the other, and all that does is it connects underneath your carburetor. You can see it right here on both sides. Now, your choke on super old cars, the choke plate would be right here, and it'd have a little spring in there. And that exhaust gas, a little bit of exhaust gas would go up underneath your carburetor instead of out your exhaust, and it would heat that spring up and it would open or close your choke depending on your temperature. And it also helps heat up your carburetor, so in the wintertime your car will warm up faster. Now, They just got these two holes here, but that exhaust kind of comes through this head and this head. It comes in from both sides and just heats that up under there. I don't want to heat my carburetor up because hot gas and hot carburetor make less horsepower. I want cold fuel delivery, and I want to not heat up my intake. So they make a block off per se that comes on a lot of these intake gaskets. It's just a little square plug that blocks off this hole on both sides. Now, it's my experience that it's just a little thin piece of 10/1000ths or whatever, however thick that valley pan gasket is for your intake, and over time those have a tendency to burn through. So what I've done is I've went in here, and these holes, you'd have to, you know, unless you're doing these exact heads for a Buick 455, other GM heads are probably the same, just because GM like to do a lot of things the same, which is really handy, but I'm not going to guarantee anything. These holes were the perfect size for me to come in with an 11/16 Silver and Deming drill. Drill down in there about 3/4 of the way. Oops, wrong hole. I drilled down in there about 3/4 of the way, and then I came back with a 1/2-14 pipe tap like this, and it took a while, but I worked it down in there and tapped these holes. This is an old rear end plug, but I ordered 4 1/2-14 plugs with a hex in the end of them, or Allen head, and I'm just going to screw them right down in here until they're flush with the head. Actually, just a little under flush with the head, because we don't want them to interfere with our intake, and that's going to completely block those exhaust crossovers from our intake. We don't have to alter our intake or anything. And then if I ever sell these heads, or the next guy gets these heads and he actually wants the exhaust crossovers, although I don't know why anyone ever would, he could probably just soak them with a little bit of WD or something and a little penetrating oil, and then pull these plugs back out, and boom, it's right back to stock. I don't know why you would ever want to do that, but that is an option, because let's be honest, any car that these heads go on past this point is never going to be driven in the snow, unless I decide to go do snow angels, in which case that's on me. But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm going to finish buttoning up this other head, and then yeah, we'll get these things tossed on the car. See you in a few. And this is what we ended up with, guys. Now, I went in here and de-shrouded all these valves, as you can see. Got a nice clean radius around there. Knocked any big junk out of there. These are going to work really nice for what we're doing. Then I wiped all these surfaces down with alcohol and blew them off with the air hose. I blew everything else off. Another thing I did is I just put some bolts in the ends of the heads here where they're going to go up against the firewall. In case we need one of those, we can just pull the bolt out and the threads won't be all full of garbage. I did go down here and my oil return holes, I just deburred those a little bit, kind of opened them, chamfered them just ever so slightly. And I actually just used one of these Harbor Freight little chamfer drills. Did both heads. And then, like we talked about before, I got these holes threaded and ready to rock. I did go inside my coolant ports, and there's a couple of stamped or cast letters inside here that were kind of raised up, and I just kind of ground those out of there, so it'll hopefully help with coolant flow a little bit. Probably a waste of 20 minutes, but hey, while you're there, just do it. I mean, it ain't gonna hurt nothing. It's just time, right? Labor's free, horsepower's not. and then I stamped my heads. I've got a number 1 stamped here, and then I've got a number 1 stamped here, and then I've got a number 1 stamped on the other end of the head. And I will stamp the block when I put these on. The number 1's gonna go on the driver's side. I'll stamp the front of the block. And then if we ever have any issues with this engine, let's say one of the cylinders starts misfiring or something and we have to pull a head off, or both heads off and send them out and get them worked on or whatever, we'll know which head came off which side of the engine, and it'll just kind of give us a little more information. There won't be any guessing game of, well, which valve was causing issues on cylinder 3 or whatever the case may be. You'll know, because you'll know which head goes with which side of the engine. Everything will kind of be matched up. Is it really that big a deal? Probably not. Am I ever even going to use that? Probably not. But it could come in handy, and while I'm here, might as well stamp it. As you can see, I've just wiped this block surface off with rubbing alcohol, let it dry, blew it off with the air hose, just to make sure there's no oil or grease or slime or coolant or anything on the head gasket surfaces on both sides of the engine. So I'm gonna toss those gaskets on there and slap the heads on. Oh, one thing I wanted to show you guys. Set this head gasket up here. If I line these holes up, as you can see, I got plenty of room for those valves in there. I could have deshrouded those a lot more. So if I was gonna really try and squeeze every ounce of horsepower out of this thing and balance the engine and all that good stuff, I mean, we could have polished that way back. We could have went in there and done all kinds of craziness. We could have CC'd all the cylinder heads, but you know, we don't need to do that where we're going. Maybe later, you never know. Maybe a different engine. So I'm gonna get these head gaskets on here, and yeah, we'll get torquing these bolts down. Now, if you've never done this before, I recommend you eat your Wheaties for breakfast. Because this ain't no fun. Ooh, come on, baby. Find the pin. What are you hitting? Oh. Sitting above the pin on this side. There she be. Yeah, definitely eat your Wheaties for breakfast if you're gonna do this. If you've never done this before, I recommend you get an old starter bolt in the front and just any old longer shoulder bolt in the back. And you gotta kind of figure out which bolt holes to put it in so it tries to hold the head in the right location for you. On this engine, I like to put it in the front, bottom, and the top, back. They drop right in. Now I'm gonna toss a couple bolts in here and just kind of get them sitting on there so that this don't try and fall off of here. Of course, it's not gonna fall off. I mean, it's sitting on a big old dowel pins. Good enough. This side over here is usually a little bit easier, just because, there we go. Don't have that big old brakes and stuff in the frickin' way. A couple bolts in that. It's just a little 3/8 impact, and I am not hardly hitting these at all. Just down till they touch. What that was, it didn't sound good. All right, guys, so I'll get the rest of the bolts in here. We'll get the torquing these babies down. We'll go from there. So the easiest way to do this is you just climb right in here. If you got the space, like that, and then all I do is I take a picture of my torque sequence. I lay it same direction as my engine, if it'll rotate. Come on, stupid thing. Anyway, don't really matter. like so. There's all my springs. There's all my bolts. And then I just start torquing them down. So, number 1's gonna be up here. Number 2. Number 9. And number 10. Okay, now we'll go back and start again. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 6. Number 7. Number 10. And that one just torqued. So, do her again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whew, back's a little sore. Keep trying to rub my head on this rusty hood. I'm trying not to knock a bunch of garbage down inside the engine. All right, so I'm gonna go back around one more time just to double check them and give them the bump. Good luck bump. Where that's at. There she be. She is torquedified. So we had to go backwards. Here's where we are at now. This is pretty crazy. Let me explain everything to you guys and then we will start moving forward. So, when I tried to bolt the engine all together with the rocker arms on the heads, the lifters, Comp Cam's lifters, wanted me to check my preload. Now, your preload is when you bolt your non-adjustable rockers onto the engine and both valves are closed, so top dead center on each valve, your push rods actually depress your hydraulic lifter ever so slightly. Now, Comp Cam's wanted my dimension to be between 20 and 80 thousandths. I was at 115. Now, I don't know what it was stock because I didn't measure anything when I tore it all apart. In hindsight, I probably should have. Didn't think I needed to since I wasn't deviating from stock, but clearly that was a major issue. Had it ran like that its whole life? Probably, maybe, I don't know. But because I didn't measure it and they're giving me a hard dimension to shoot for, I mean, it's really hard to justify a major internal dimension being out, especially that far. So, did the math, banged my head on against the wall. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Well, there's a couple of things I had kind of battling me here, and so I had to start working down through my variables, and this is what we came up with. So I measured with my stock push rods, which are right there, and a Comp Cam's lifter. I also, and that's where I got my 115 thousandths, shooting for 20 to 80. Tossed in one of my two of my original lifters that I pulled out of the engine, measured those. Measured them with a new rocker arm assembly that I had assembled and with one of my old ones. Got 110 thousandths. Essentially the exact same that I got with the comp cams lifters. That leads me to believe that it's probably been running that way its whole life, because the only two other variables there are valve stem length and the center line of the cam, the new cam. I measured the old cam. I have no way of measuring the new cam because it's already installed in the engine. The only way to measure it would be to pull the cam out. Don't really have time for that, energy, and it just doesn't make any sense. Now, the valve stem length, it does have brand new valves that were ground. I was told by my engine guy that he put them right back to the stock dimensions. I trust him. The only way to really check that, to be honest, I don't even know how I would check that because I don't have the old lifters and yeah, or the old valves, my bad. So it is what it is. Those two variables are the only thing I haven't checked, can't check, but they should not have changed. Especially that drastic, like the center line of the cam is not going to be off 80 thousandths. It just doesn't make any sense. So, what did I do? How did you solve this conundrum, Dustin? Well, I needed to shorten the length of my push rods in order to drop me within the 20 to 80 thousandths spec. So, 100 around, you can get custom push rods made. Obviously, that takes time because you give them your measurement and they make them for you. We don't have that kind of luxury of time. We've got a race to get to. The push rods that I found are for a Pontiac V8. They are the correct diameter. They are the correct length to give me the right amount of preload on my hydraulic lifters. The only downside to them is they are hardened because they are for solid lifters, not hydraulic lifters. So instead of 60 thousandths wall thickness, they're 80 thousandths. They are also chromoly. They are one piece. They don't have these little balls welded onto the ends of them and then hardened. They're one solid piece that's formed. They are harder than hard because with solids, you want super strong push rods. They are way overkill for this build, but they are the correct length and they're gonna hold up. We know they're not gonna fail. Also, one other thing I did, I had a Crower cam. The cam we put in the engine is a Crower. I didn't have Crower lifters. I had, it's over there. I had comp cams lifters. So I thought, hey, don't screw yourself. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Get lifters that are the same brand as your cam. Maybe that'll make a difference. Essentially, I've only got a few days left before Cletus and Cars and we have to leave, right? So the last thing I wanted to do was order push rods, them show up, and then go, oh, now I need to order something else, Anything that was a variable, I just ordered it. I'll send back what I'm not using or figure something out. I don't know, but failure is not an option. I'm not gonna miss Cletus and Cars over $100 or $50 or $75. We're gonna make it happen. I got these Crower lifters and I measured them to my comp cams lifters, and these are actually 10 thousandths shorter, which actually makes these push rods even better as far as my numbers go. We're gonna take 2 push rods, 2 lifters, we're gonna go toss them in the engine, on top dead center, we're gonna toss the rocker arm on there, we're gonna torque it down, we're gonna measure the preload and make sure that we're within spec. As long as we are, fingers crossed, I'm gonna start slapping all this stuff back together. Dare to be different, guys. So I'm gonna get over there, I'll toss 2 of these in here, we'll measure it, we'll see where we're at, and then we'll go from there. Wasn't trying to ramble on, but I wanted to give you guys the full scoop. All right, guys, so I got our new push rods and 2 new lifters in here. I've torqued our rocker arms and shaft down to our torque spec, which is 25 foot-pounds. I rotated the engine around 1 full rotation. Now we've waited just a little bit, and we've allowed these the lifters to kind of settle in to where they're gonna be. I've marked up here with permanent marker. It's super hard to see because the push rods are black, but I'm gonna take this razor blade here, I'm gonna hold it flat on our valve cover surface, and we're just gonna scribe a little line right across there. So we have a reference point to measure. And then I'm going to do the same on this one. Try and keep it as flat as I can so we get an accurate measurement. I might just, yep. So I can see that line there, and I can see that line there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to unbolt this, loosen these bolts just enough that it takes the pressure off of those lifters. I'm going to tighten this back down by hand just till it holds them so that they're in the pockets of the rockers, but they're not tight. So that's just holding them lined up, and I'm just going to put my fingers here, and I'm going to remark these with the razor blade. There's one. Let's see if I can mark this one back here. It's kind of hard to get this front one because it's in a bad spot. Razor blade doesn't want to sit flat on the head there. That should be good enough. Now we can pull these push rods out and we'll measure them and see what we get. All right, guys, so I got the push rod out of here. You can see my lines there. Probably not because I can't. But I can just barely see them there. Try and measure that. And we've got about 30 on this one. The other one came out of the front. And like I said, it was really hard to mark that front one just because the valve cover surface isn't very flat. But if I measure the wide side here, it's also about 30. And if I measure over here, they're touching. So that's clearly 0. But I'm going to go with they're probably both the same because the line's a little gapped over here. Now, the measurement we had before was 115, which is way out of spec. Now, even this one, if it was 18, is within 2 of spec. Way closer than where we were before. So we're going to slap this thing together. I'll get you guys up on the old time lapse there. And we'll start bolting some shit together and get these heads all buttoned up. Alright guys, so what I've done here, they've got these little plastic buttons that hold the rockers all on here. And they're marked left and right. I've struggled with this. I had to buy a half dozen of each and pick the best looking ones. It seems to me like the ones that go on the left-hand side of your bolt hole, they're just not offset enough. You can see here, if you can see this one, it just barely offset, if at all. And this one is clearly offset towards the bolt. And the head is kind of acting as a guide plate of sorts. And I know that because here's one of my old push rods. And you can see it's nasty, slimy. I haven't done anything to it. And it's got this silver line right around the top. That's where it was rubbing against the head ever so slightly. So even though I'm concerned about it rubbing on the head, it's really not going to be an issue, I don't think. Because from the factory, they were rubbing on the head. And now we've got these hardened push rods, so we should be good to go. I'm gonna pull this off. These buttons, what we've done is we just took these little black buttons and we just sanded the little knurls off of them, or nubs, or whatever you want to call them, that hold it together so that I could assemble everything. I could set it on here. I could look at everything. If I wanted to move this rocker arm over here, I just pull it off, move it around, bolt it back on by hand. Don't torque it, 9,000 times, but bolt it back down by hand and look at everything and get it exactly the way I want. And I think this is the way I'm gonna have it set up. So now I'm gonna take this over to the bench, wipe everything off, lube it all up really good, and I'm gonna install the buttons for the final time, the actual buttons I'm gonna use, which actually, I got the yellow buttons, or white buttons from TA Performance, and they are bigger in diameter than these factory black replacements. And you can see how much play these allow. The TA buttons are about 15 thousandths bigger in diameter, so that doesn't sound like much, but it will help guide these a little bit better. So anyway, I'm gonna get these tore off of here. That side's already installed and done. I'm gonna tear this off, go get these installed, lubed up, and we'll toss it back on the motor. All right guys, so got this rocker arm all bolted together. Got it torqued down. Got all our buttons on there. Nothing seems to be rubbing. A couple of them are awfully close. I got one over there that's a little sketchy, but I think it'll be okay. Other than that, it said 25 to 30 foot-pounds, so I went with 28. I'll meet you in the middle. You know, some of these look a little concerning, but close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So we're gonna send it. I'm gonna call the heads installed, rockers installed. Make sure you check out all our other videos. I got one coming up on putting the intake on and porting it and all that fun stuff. We're gonna have a video on fire up and breaking in the cam, all that good stuff. Yeah, make sure you like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends. I'll post some videos around my melon here of all those other videos that I mentioned and a bunch of other ones. The channel is growing super fast. I appreciate all your guys' support. I'll catch you in the next one. Till then, keep on wrenching. Peace.